Hi everyone, this is Tanya from Flying Dog Studio. Thank you so much for joining me as I learn to make the Coptic stitch on this little sketchbook. Now I have made some sketchbooks before and I will link that down below, but this one is a bit different. I decided I would get the actual tools you need, so I got the bone folder, I got the awl, this is beeswax, and a cute little dispenser, and then I thought I would try the hooked needles, the curved needles. I'm still on the fence about that one, and I'll share that with you in a bit. But right now we're going to need that bone folder, so I'm going to keep that out. The first thing I did, I had some extra watercolor paper. This is a 140-pound cold press. It is the wood pulp paper, so this is not 100% cotton. I really hated that, but I pre-cut these, and as you can see, it's 6 1/4 and then almost 5 1/2 on the dimensions. That's the size of the book. It's kind of odd dimensions, but if you've ever purchased watercolor paper, any kind of paper in a pad, you know it's not going to match the dimensions they say. So you have to always come back and trim. So that's what I was doing there. I was trimming, and I have pre-folded, but I'm going to use this bone folder to get a nice crisp edge. And let's take a look. That's nice and crisp. Now, if I had just used it folded, then it would look like that. So we have a much better fold. So I am happy I got the bone folder. If you're on a budget though, what you may want to do is just use the end of a butter knife from your kitchen. That's what I did in a previous video, and it works great. So this crazy little folded piece of paper is how I'm going to determine where to punch the holes in these little folios, or these little pieces of paper that go into the sketchbook. So I cut a piece of just typing paper where it would match the width of the book, and I folded it, as you can see, and I put little dots where those folds came together, where those little creases were. And I'm not going to do every one. I don't want that many. I don't want 7 holes. I decided just to do 4. So I'm not going to do those. So that is going to be my little guideline. Now I'm lining it up. As you can see, I have my cover, and basically all my cover is some chipboard that I cut down to the same size as the pieces of paper. So identical size there. I'm just marking on that. I'm going to mark that the top and the bottom, and I'm skipping those holes that I don't want. And then I'm going to draw a line connecting them. This is the way I do it. Normally, when I make a sketchbook, the ones that I will link down below, the video I'm going to link below, my mini sketchbooks, I could put a huge clip on there and kind of hold that together. I didn't have a huge clip that would fit this. It's pretty thick. So I decided just to hold it and just pray that it worked out, and it did. So that was great. So I'm using a straight edge to get that all the way down. Now you could do it a little more mathematically on deciding where to put these holes, and it's kind of up to you how many of these holes you want to make in the papers. I did it the lazy person way. Now this is the awl. It's super sharp. I actually call this my sharp pointy tool, and I do have a band-aid on my finger. That is not from this. That is from something else that I did, so I did not poke myself. I am current on tetanus shots because I am known for hurting myself. Now the first time I did it, I put chipboard underneath and I poked it, and then I got a little bit braver because I had to go back and make the holes a bit bigger, and that was taking too long. And so I decided I would just poke straight through. So that's what I started doing, and I was very careful. You'll be happy to know I did not poke myself one time. But what I did find using the awl, and that's one reason I pick it up and start poking holes, is that it does bend the tip of it. So if you make these little books out there and you use an awl, please tell us down below the best awl to get. So what I'm doing here is making sure all of my little holes are lined up. Since I kind of eyeballed where I wanted to put the holes, I wanted to make sure I got them lined up before we started sewing them together. Now I need to determine where I want to put the stitches that wrap around the outside into the cover. And when I made the marks for the holes for the pages, I made certain that on the edges of the cover, I made marks there as well, so they would line up with the holes. And you probably noticed that in the last shot. So what I want to do now is make certain that I'm getting it even on both sides. I'm trying to determine where those stitches are going to wrap around, and I want it to be even. So I'm going to just draw a line that's probably about a 1/2 inch. I'm just using the width of my ruler there. And now those little holes on the other side, I'm drawing straight down to that line we just made. So I know it's going to line up, and there we go. See, those are the little marks on the end that I had made when I made the holes. Now I know that's where I need to make my holes with my awl. And this is where the awl really started to bend on me, and actually the tip of it broke off. It's actually safer for me, but unfortunately I couldn't find the tip anywhere, which I'm certain means I'm going to step on it when I'm walking barefoot through the house. But anyway, we got the holes poked. So now it's time to put the paper on the cover. And there's the way I wanted to make sure I had it going the right way. So I'm going to make certain also, it's just, again, I eyeball everything. It's just for me, so I don't mind if it's a little imperfect. So a bone folder's width all the way around. Now, one thing I did make certain so that those holes would be lined up with the paper. What I'm looking at right now is the inside. I am drawing a line all the way around, so when I glue it, there's the outside. That's how I know. That says O for outside. So I know that's the side I need to glue down to the paper to make it work out for the book. And glue all. This is what I use, glue all and just a brush. That's just a cheap brush. It's not one of my good brushes, just a cheap brush. Usually I use my finger, but I'm making smaller books. Since this is a big one, I went ahead and didn't use my fingers. I actually used a brush. And there's not a certain amount of glue you need. You just don't want too much because you don't want your paper to wrinkle and pucker, but you do want to cover every little bit. All right. Putting it face down in that square I just made so I can keep it lined up. There we go. We have it mashed down. Now that it's dried a little bit, I'm poking a hole through. That's so when it completely dries, I'll still know, because I'm going to cover the inside of it with something else. I will know where those holes are, and I can repoke them so that we can start sewing the book. A lot of people cut these corners off. When I was in school, our art instructor in college taught us to make pleats on the end. And he taught us, we were actually graded on that, to fold the ends like that and then wrap it around, mash it down, and then do that all the way around. And then you're going to glue those ends down. So if you don't want to do that, some people cut those little tips off and they just fold it over. That's fine too. But you can see we're going to have a little pleat on the end. And the bone folder was very handy for this. I was able to really get a good crease around there. And so when it glued it, it didn't pop right back up. So that was a really good thing. Now we're going to add the glue underneath. And I'm going to squirt a little bit and then just use the brush and kind of even it out. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to have an inside piece that goes on top of this. So if it's a little messy, that's okay, and no worries. Now that we have all of that glued down, we're going to set it to the side because I want to make that little piece I was talking about that went on top. So I have my Derwent ink tints pencils and I have picked apple green. What I have here is some cotton muslin, and I'm simply coloring on top. Now, I have done this kind of thing before, not in a video, but for some stuff with students I've worked in the past, I have used acrylic paint, but I thought I don't want it stiff, I want it soft. So I'm going to use the ink tints pencils because they are ink based and they are water soluble, so I can put the water on there and it's going to stain it for me and I don't have to worry about it bleeding off on anything. It did take about 3 layers to get a nice green on there. And you can go on messy, but once the water hits it, then it just blends right out. As you can see here, I used the hairdryer to kind of hurry it along. I did use an extra large piece, larger than what I needed, because I wasn't certain, since it was 100% cotton, I was going to be using hairdryer if there would be shrinkage, but there was not. So I cut it down to size, and there it is. I left about think about 1/4 of an inch and all the way around, and we had our pleats. Now this is where those holes that we punched earlier are going to come in handy, because I'm going through the front of it and then to the inside so that we can have those holes to sew the cover to the rest of the book. Now, here we go. There's the thread that I chose, and there's the beeswax and the curved needle. That's what you're going to need for this part. That is just some embroidery floss, and I'm wrapping it around here and pulling it through. I found it was easy to get the beeswax on, and that is supposed to keep your thread from like coming apart or knotting up. I did not find that that was the case. So if I had it to go over again, I probably wouldn't use the beeswax. Just put a knot in the end and thread that needle. And I am going to start at the back of the book. And actually, I don't think it really matters because it's going to be the same either way. You're going to open up your first little page, your first little folio, pull it through. Doesn't matter which end you want to start on. I just started on the right end, flip it over, go through the back, pull it back through, and there we go. It takes me a minute. This is the hardest part. Now notice that my thread is going to be on the left side that I'm pulling through, the left side of the one that goes into the folio. Now the curved needle, it comes in handy here. I'm going to wrap it around that one that's anchoring it to the cover, and then pulling it through here. There we go, a nice little tug. Always pull toward you. I'm going to say that multiple times. Always pull that thread toward yourself. We're going to go back through that same little hole, pull it through. Again, pull it away from you. Don't pull it to the side. Don't pull it to the side, whatever you do. The reason for that, and I'll tell you in a second, go back through the next hole, and we're just going to repeat the process all the way down. Going through the back and pulling it through, and then we're going to wrap it around. It's on the left hand side. We're going to wrap it around that little anchor and go back through that hole again. And the reason you don't want to pull to the left or the right when you're tightening things up is that you will rip the paper. I know this because I started this book over 3 times. I'm not really a person who swears, but if I were going to take up swearing, this would be the project that I would have done that on, because this was very frustrating. Like I said, I had never done a book like this before, so it was a learning process. So learn from me, always pull away. So again, we're looping it back around that anchor, going back into the same hole, pulling it through again, pull it straight, and then go into the next hole. This is our last hole on this section, so we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're still going to go through the back, and then we're going to have to anchor it, because you always want to anchor it to the bottom. So let's go back through that anchor there. Now we're going to pick up our next folio, and we fold it over. I just flipped it over right on top to make sure my holes line up. And I'm going to go in that hole and pull it through, and then we're going to just work our way back in the other direction, doing the same process. We pulled it through, and now we're going to want to anchor it to the one that we just sewed in below. So always anchor it to the one below. And we're going to wrap it around and pull it through and go right back into the hole that we just came from. And if it's a little confusing, you can slow this video down. I do have a clip coming up where I have slowed this down for you so you can see it up close, but don't hesitate to hit the settings button. It'll probably be in the upper right hand corner depending what type of device you're using. Slow it down to half speed and take a look at it as we go through it together. So going through that last hole, and again, we've reached the end, so we're going to do it just as we did on the other end. We're going to anchor it down, pull it through, and then flip over our next page and go back inside and just complete that process all the way back to the other end. Now this is the slowed down version. So again, I'm sticking it in, pulling it through. And what you will notice is that on either end, this does not apply, but all of your stitches going up in the middle, as you get more of them done, you can kind of tell here, it looks like a little braid, but on the ends, it won't look like that. It only looks like that in your center stitches going up. So we're pulling it through, we wrapped it around, anchored it to the one below, going back in the hole. So now I have done all of them, and we had 20 pages all together. So I'm coming through, I'm going to anchor. I have one more page and a cover, but we're going to be doing this a little bit differently. I'm not sewing the next page in. Instead, I'm flipping the page and the cover over on top. Now, this is really something I had to work with, and I even pulled it apart and did it again just to make sure I got it right. But you're going to go through the cover first, go through the outside. And I have not sewn in the folio yet. It is still loose. There it is. It's still loose. This is a bit tricky because it's hard to keep them in line, but you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. It's on the left-hand side there. Again, it came through the left-hand side. I am going to have to anchor it. So let's pull it right through there. I didn't go through the one below. This is a little bit different. I went through there. Now I'm going to stick it into the folio hole. So it's already anchored to the one below. I did that before I started, but I kind of had to anchor the cover even though we haven't sewn the paper in yet. So I wrap it around and then I stick it in. And again, do not hesitate to rewind and slow this down because this is kind of tricky. So again, I was telling myself, pull that away. Do not pull it to the side. You can't mess up this last piece of paper. So we're getting it lined back up. And we're going to take a minute here to kind of get it all nice and tight. So I'm pulling away from me, and then I'm also going to grab the thread that's on top of the cover, and I'm going to adjust that a little bit right there and kind of pull it, and then you'll see it pull tightly. Okay, now it's nice and tight. To me, that was, again, one of the hardest parts was to get that nice and tight. So we're working on the inside of that folio. I'm going to open it and go through the next hole. This has not been slowed down. This is actually how fast I work in real life. So that's a benefit for you. You get to watch it slowly. So again, I had a lot of trouble with these needles. I think a straight needle would have been easier on this part, but trying to anchor it and going through the pages below, the curved needle worked best, but you can't switch back and forth. So I think I'd probably still stick with the curved needle. So now I'm going to anchor it, and my pages are nice and tight because my stitches are nice and tight. So it takes me a minute to get it through here. So with arthritis in my fingers, that was kind of hard. Plus I almost lose the needle. And if you're nervous at this point thinking I'm about to poke myself, I was nervous as well. But I do get it pulled through. And this is why I say I don't know if the beeswax is a wise idea, because you can see my embroidery floss is trying to unravel. I really don't think it did me much good. Plus, it was actually making it hard to hold on to the needle because I had that all over my hand. So I've anchored it. I'm going back through the top of the cover, and I'm going to pull that back through. Again, it takes me a minute. And now we are going to anchor it to the page below. So the page that we just sewed in, we had to anchor that page to the page below. Now we are anchoring the cover to the page we just got finished sewing in. And then we are going to stick that back through the hole. Things start to get a little tight at this point because it's hard to find the hole. Again, I'm telling you, the beeswax was making it hard for me to hold on to that needle. But we're going to stick it back through and then go through the next hole and do the same thing all the way down. Now, I could have made this video a little shorter by cutting this out and just showing you this step a couple of times. But because this is kind of a confusing part of the book, you get used to doing it one way and then you're trying to sew two things in at once, I decided I wanted to show you the whole thing. So I'm showing you more than just one stitch. So now we've made it to the end and we've anchored, and then we're going to go through the top. And you can see how my embroidered floss is unwinding at the end. We barely make it through without it completely winding apart. So I've pulled it through, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap it around and anchor it. And I almost lost my mind and went the wrong direction there. There we go. I was getting kind of tired at this point. And then I'm going to stick it in that hole. And we're going to go back through. Kind of hard to get in there. Bear with me. We're almost to the end. We're going to have a complete book. There we go. And you're just going to tie this off on the inside. Now, I think I had to use, my book was pretty thick, and I think I had to use about three, I think I had to change it 3 times. I think I had to rethread my needle 3 times, get more thread 3 times to make it all the way through. And all you do is you just tie a knot. You don't, I didn't cut my knots off. You can do that. I didn't cut my knots off. I went ahead and just tied it in a knot a couple of times and then just ended up winding it all the way down like that. And that's what a lot of people do. I may come back and cut the knots. I don't know, but there we go, guys. I made it all the way to the end. And if you made it this far, thank you for doing that. Thank you for making it. I'm just doing a little trimming here. Some of the little threads are just stuck everywhere. Some of the muslin kind of came apart, but that's how the end looks. And then you can decide which side that you want to be your beginning or your end. See, there's one of the little threads. You can tuck those in, or like I said, you can just cut them off. Right now, I'm just going to leave them, use the book, and see how I like it. It sets flat. It opens flat. No matter if you're between pages or you're between folios or in the middle of folio, it lies flat. I do like that much better. I usually do books with spines, and where you make the spine and glue it together. This one doesn't have that, and I actually like it better. I can't wait to use it. I just wish it had 100% cotton paper, but I had scissors. These are some of the supplies I used. I had the hooked needle, and that was the brand that I used. The beeswax, I don't know. It was kind of messy. It was all over the place. My dog kept trying to eat it off the floor. It was easy. This particular little dispenser was easy for putting it on, but I don't know that that's worth your money. Then you had the awl, and again, if you know of an awl that is good, please put that down below. And then I loved the bone folder. And it's kind of up to you on the curved needle. You know, it was really good for kind of hooking those together, but it was hard to go in and out when you needed a straight needle. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me. I always appreciate it when you're here. I do have a special project for this book, so I hope you'll tune in for that in future videos. And until then, I will see you in the next one.